with the ones that are well spoken, yes, but I feel like there's some fighters that just don't belong there.
Mhm.
Um, I really feel like there's also just been some takes from some of these fighters that are just absolutely ridiculous. Like as smart as Dominic Cruz is, sometimes he has some bad takes.
Mhm.
Like, oh,
Gas
Conor
like McGregor gassing out Habib.
Khabib. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like in my opinion, I feel like if you want to be the best in the world at something, you develop so much like brain energy into that it's kind of like you're gonna have some biases. You're gonna be looking at this guy and being all like, okay, I'm better than them or something like that. Like I feel like the best commentators are experienced in the sport. They know how to do the moves and stuff like that. But they haven't reached that level where they're one of the best in the world because then you get so personally involved that no matter who's fighting, there's going to be some type of a bias where it's like, oh, you see a little bit of your style in that guy or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think like it's good in a way, but the thing that Jared said about being biased, I think it's a real thing. You know, you see guys who trained at they've trained at their gyms, they trained at the rival gyms. You know, I mean, I just think there's gonna be some bias towards it. Like, let's say you get a guy who, let's say Dustin Poirier retires. He wants to be a commentator. He's going to obviously be more biased to the people who go to American Top Team, you know, and it's just natural. It's gonna what's going to happen. Daniel Cormier is obviously going to be biased towards certain people. Michael Bisping is going to be biased towards his UK people, like his Darren Tills, his Tom Aspinalls. And I think that's the problem with it. I think you get a guy like a John Anik, even a Lauren Sanko. I think she did a really good job, like who aren't on any sort of side. You know what I mean? So and who do know the sport. Like you still have to obviously just because you haven't done this sport doesn't mean you don't know about it, you know?
Yeah.
And I think in a way those people are better because you just don't see the bias. And it's not like Jared said, it's not competing with yourself. So I think these fighters, like their brains are wired differently no matter what, no matter how old they are. They're still gonna like have some pride, have some like some sort of ego. And I think the people, the commentators weren't fighters don't have that kind of ego, which gives us a clearer, like a more accurate view. That's what I think.
I really like Angela Hill. She's done a little bit of commentary, but I think most of what she's done has been after the fights. I think that it's because there's going to be less of these biases, I think, because she doesn't have the ability to fight most of the people she's
Mhm.
commentating on because they're men. I really enjoy her as a commentator personally. Who are some of your guys' favorite commentators? Oh, also he was about to say something earlier. What were you about to say?
I was just gonna say that I agree with like if they're experienced, then they're like qualified to do the job. But even then, like I don't know, maybe it's just me when I watch the fights. But like Daniel Cormier, Dominic Cruz, and fucking there's one other
Bisping?
maybe Bisping. I don't. I think it was
Felder does it.
Felder. Just over like their commentating sucks ass. Like I don't enjoy it at all.
Yeah, no, I agree, man. I can't stand Michael
He's not
Bisping.
joking.
I can't stand I don't mind Paul Felder though. He seems to be a guy who's more of a play-by-play guy. I think the UFC needs more play-by-play and less color commentator, less, story.
Storytellers, yeah.
Like Michael Bisping will be telling a story while someone's getting knocked out and he won't talk about the knockout until he's finished with his story. Um I think that experience definitely means something. Like I think it should be silly to not have any fighters on commentary. I think you need some to just kind of have an idea of what the fighters are going through, like someone who's actually been in their spot in their position. But like Joe Rogan is so out of touch these days. Like back in the day, he was following MMA more intimately, but he's so out of touch that like I just cringe at some of the things that he says. And it seems like, bro, are you even fucking following the sport?
Like this is
Like,
in 2018. Like
yeah, like this isn't 2018, bro. Like, I don't know, man. I feel like the UFC, Laura Senko is fine. I mean, she did all right this past weekend. And as you said, Angela Hill, she's not fighting any of these guys. But, another woman, what's her name? Juliana Pena had some of the most disastrous takes ever on one of her fight night shows that she did with ESPN. She said like, so she was breaking down Umar Nurmagomedov and Raoni Barcelos, and she said that she's picking Barcelos because he already has a win over Nurmagomedov. And like, it wasn't like, oh wait, no, I meant like, no, she genuinely like just said that. And I'm just, how the fuck are you just hired for this job? You have no idea what you're talking about. I think that the UFC needs people that really follow the sport. Like Dan Hardy, the UFC got rid of him, but in my opinion, I think Dan Hardy, I don't know if you guys have seen his breakdowns, but he is one of the most passionate guys when it comes to MMA. He loves breaking down fights. You could tell he really cares about it. I think that's a guy that the UFC should have around. That's a fighter that has a lot of experience that is perfect for the role. But these big names, just because they're big names and they have big personalities, I don't think you need to hire a guy just because he has a big personality. Like, I don't like how boxing does the same thing sometimes. I think you need if you're going to get fighters, they need to be like Dan Hardy, who actually like invests into studying fights. They're not just doing it for the paycheck. Michael Bisping, this is just a paycheck for him, and he uses it to like bask in his glory. So I don't like that.
You could tell that by him doing slap boxing too.
Yeah, he does slap boxing too.
So interesting point that I have here. I think that even though he's not a commentator, I would be really interested to see Ariel Helwani commentate because he has so much knowledge from having watched the sport for so long. And I feel like a lot of people sort of disrespect him, but I feel like just when he talks to these fighters and stuff like that, he has a lot of good opinions. I think it would be interesting if he ever decided to commentate. He wouldn't for the UFC because Dana hates him.
Yeah, of course. Who are some other guys that you would like to see, or women? I know you said Angela Hill. Are there any other names? For me, Dan Hardy is a must, and I think the UFC should get rid of Bisping. I don't mind DC too much because
DC's good.
DC has some really good knowledge with the wrestling, and I feel like that's something that's important. You have to have a high level wrestler there. Henry Cejudo maybe in the future.
He's too slow though.
Should be good. He is a little bit slow. I think that Dan Hardy is perfect. Who else? Who else would be good?
I say we get Nate Diaz on commentary.
Nate Diaz. How about Nate Diaz, Stipe Miocic, and Yoel Romero? How about all three of them on commentary?
Commentating on Power Slap.
Yeah.
All right. No, but unironically for you guys though, I feel like the way you guys talk about the sport and stuff like that, and you guys also like the way I watch it, there's fights that because I'm trying to like develop my own skills and stuff like that, I watch it trying to mimic it, but I don't end up paying attention all the way down the rankings and stuff like that. You guys are just really into the sport. If you wanted to like look into like doing like regional MMA commentating or something like that, like in New York,
I don't know, man. I put out some pretty hot takes online. I don't know if they'd like it. Like I have a very extreme. People are shitting on me all the time. I don't know. But you know what? If that's possible,
I get shit on all the time. You see my account?
Oh, of course. But the only issue is, dude, like, I just think that they'd see me and they'd be like, "You never had a fight. You're not the owner of a gym." Like, they would be like, you know, these are old heads that are running these promotions.
What if you got licensed to do a little bit of MMA judging, and then after you judge a few fights, then you try to commentate?
I would absolutely love that. I know like John McCarthy has a class. You know, I'm sure he has an online class. I would really love to be a judge. That'd be really cool.
John McCarthy would not be a terrible commentator.
Yeah, John McCarthy is a commentator for Bellator. You know, maybe the UFC could book him over here, but
he would not be bad.
Yeah.
Well, one person who I absolutely hate as a commentator, not Dan Murriata. Fuck, I'm so out of it.
Commentator or referee?
He's a referee. Big John McCarthy. Yeah. We're on the same.
You don't like McCarthy?
I don't like him as a commentator.
Why? Because he's all about, you know, he wrote the rules.
So he's always giving these takes on how the rules are supposed to be when he made them. You know what I mean?
Back in the 90s.
The sport's different now. You
know
what I mean? He's more vocal about this on Twitter, but he also does a little bit of it during the actual fights. But like one of the most horrendous things that I've ever seen him say is it's just like he gets in arguments sometimes with people on the internet about scoring, and then he pulls the trump card by saying, "Oh yeah, well I wrote that," and it's like, no, you didn't. You wrote a version of it 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And he tries to say like my way's the highway as far as scoring goes. I feel like
I'm not a fan. That's too biased. I agree. I agree. It's a little bit too biased. I think that for me, you know, Dan Hardy is like perfect. I think if I had to come up with like a dream team, I would say Dan Hardy, maybe John Anik is phenomenal. And then I don't know. Like I feel like they need
better guys.
guy
They need new guys.
that's like a high level grappler, maybe like a really high level grappler.
Honestly,
Well,
what if they tried to get Sam Alvey on commentary? Because he's a very sociable person, good at talking, and I feel like I don't know if he's still fighting for the UFC. I don't think
he's not. He's not.
but he's given a lot to the company at least. So
He
I
has.
feel,
He's given a lot to the company for sure. But I don't know. I feel like he might be a little biased.
Yeah.
uh-huh.
Like
Louis
he's
talks
had,
with him.
He's had a
He's
lot of
given-
takes
he's-
that I disagree with.
he's had a lot of wild takes.
But I do feel like even though I disagree with a lot of his takes, it's no more than how I disagree with some of these fighters.
Yeah.
And I feel like since he has given a lot to the sport, he's one of those like company guys.
Yeah.
I think it's sort of unfair that guys that give just as much like him don't sort of end up getting the same rewards as some of these other fighters.
Like a
Yeah.
Michael Bisping thing, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Who
Like
gets that role for no reason.
I agree with that, man. I think the UFC was a terrible choice to get Bisping. I really think like they need people that are, obviously you have to have some kind of entertainment value. But I think all these guys have a little bit of humor. I think Dominic Cruz can definitely be a little bit dry. I think he's a little bit of a buzzkill. He's too serious sometimes. But Dan Hardy could be funny. I think John Anik could be funny too. Man, maybe they should get back Goldberg. They used to have Goldberg back in the day.
I think they need new guys. I think they need new, fresh guys. You know what I mean? Like they
need
can't
Dan
keep.
Hardy. I don't like Dana White
They
has
got
such
the
a vendetta
Weasel
against
and
Hardy.
MMA Guru on
Yeah, maybe we should get MMA Guru on there.
With
But
a-
Guru, if I'm gonna be real, Guru is extremely biased when he's watching fights. Like, for example, if there's like a Dagestani fighter, he'll just like rail them, and for sure he does give them credit in his predictions. Like he's not biased in his predictions at all anymore. He's not at all. But while he's watching the fights, he would need to tune back some of the shit he's saying about the Dagestanis.
Yeah, for sure.
But man, I think commentary is definitely harder than it looks. But yeah, I think Dan Hardy, Anik, and maybe a Paul Felder, or I think Henry Cejudo. I feel like Henry Cejudo, the reason why he's a little slow is because he smokes a lot. I think he's open about this. He smokes a lot of weed, and he's stoned all the time.
What about John Jones?
I don't want to see him on commentary personally.
I don't think the UFC should put him on commentary.
But he's not like he knows a lot about the sport. He has his fake nice guy act. Like
I just think that
I think
the
he's
commentators need to
able
be
to do the
clean
job.
guys. Like Jones has too much of a tainted legacy. I don't think that's a good look.
He's
Yeah.
able to do the job, and I think he could do a good job at it.
I think so. I don't know if he.
I just really feel like first off, with how political of a figure he is in the sport, I feel like it would just cause a lot of controversy with him
Yeah,
on the commentary
it'd
team.
be a bad look.
And then also I feel like it could even affect the fighters. Like when you're in the apex or something like that and you could physically hear the commentators and stuff like that. If John Jones is commentating about somebody who he already beat the shit out of or something like that and hates him to a
Commentating an Anthony Smith fight.
Yeah. If he's commentating Anthony Smith, I feel like it's just like there's a level of distraction that would bring.
Yeah.
Just because
Also, just being the
a
goat.
lot of fighters revere him as like being just such a piece of work.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know if he'd be commentating Anthony Smith because like he'd probably be doing it 5-6 years from now. But I think I definitely see what you mean, Jacob. Like he's a very well-spoken
Very
guy.
knowledgeable.
He's definitely smart. Obviously not smart in a certain way. He's not like the socially
Good decision
That's
maker.
smart.
Yeah.
He's not a good decision maker, of course.
I think Anik's the best. My dream commentating would be Anik. I would say I don't mind like DC, honestly, straight up.
I don't mind DC.
And I like Lauren Sanko on it. I think she's good. It's just the only
Lauren
concern
Sanko's good too.
The only concern is if when there's a crazy knockout. I don't want to hear her like scream.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's my only concern with her. Like I don't think it sounds bad, like play by play from a female. Like
John Anik has the perfect on the. Do you guys think he prepares like the lines he says for if there's going to be a KO? He must, because some of the lines he says when guys win the belt, he says like the perfect thing.
things.
He's got to reverse those. I really like the amount of research that John Anik does, because he finds those NBA stats.
Deep
Yeah.
cut.
Like
He
he'll be
once
all
talked
like,
about
the
these two
first
guys
fighter to
going
win
through
a
like some
Oh yeah,
legal situation.
with the son. I met with this son, right?
both these fighters are having custody battles involving
Yeah, exactly.
It's so
That's
foul.
wild, but he has some crazy stats that he can talk about. Like this is the most leg kicks anyone's taken on their left leg since 2009
Yeah,
or something.
exactly.
And
I
also
don't know how he
the
finds
Sean
those
O'Malley
stats.
long legs, the Cheeto Vera
The
Sean
Cheeto Vera and Sean
O'Malley.
O'Malley have longer legs than Stipe.
Stephen Miocic. It's like, how do you come up with that? Like, how do you track that? But I think
Yeah.
Rogan needs to get the fuck away from the sport. Same with Mike
Yeah.
thing. Because those guys are just like I'm almost at the point where I just want to turn off the put on the mute button. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like
I'm
when
over
Joe
it too,
Rogan's
man.
talking.
Back in the day it was cool, but nowadays it's just too much Joe Rogan.
I think he could
Rogan's
still do the interviews, and I think that maybe
I think
during
the interviews are
post
fine.
fight, the post fight like conversations they're having with the
But Joe
fighters
Rogan fucked up with
on
Jan
ESPN.
Blachowicz. Have you seen his interview with Jan? He
yeah.
basically told Jan, like, you lost.
That was I thought that was inappropriate because like they haven't even had the chance to watch the fight back. Even Joe didn't, right? And there's
Yeah.
been fights where I've scored it for one fighter and then I immediately rewatch it and I change my mind.
Yeah.
You shouldn't go out there and try to tell somebody why they should
Lost.
go out there and apologize for pretty much have him like basically apologize for his performance. And he hasn't even watched it back. That really pissed me off.
Yeah. I think watching fights back really does something, you know, like it really, it's like does make a real difference, you know, in certain situations. Like even like the Jan O'Malley fight, rewatching it, like, you know what I mean? Like certain fights, like the Magomed, like you said, the Magomed Jan Blachowicz, when I watched, I was like, okay, Jan lost that fight. Rewatched the fight, I was like, okay, that was for sure a draw. You know what I mean? Like Jan for sure won the first 3 rounds. Like there's a lot of emotion. The crowd could play factors, stuff like that. So I thought it was very inappropriate for Rogan. I don't even think he should be doing the post fights either. I just think he's so not in touch with his sport at all. Like, do you guys really think that Rogan is like writing notes, doing research, rewatching fight? He's not doing that anymore. There's no way. He's too busy doing his other shit.
I think I just really like the sport of MMA being as big as it possibly can be, and I feel like with his brand as having like arguably the biggest podcast in the world or whatever, I feel like that's good for the sport. Even though I disagree with a lot of the things Joe Rogan does, and I'd like to keep him around, but I just want it to be in some way where it's.
But I don't even know if Joe Rogan I don't know if that's pulling in eyes. I think Joe Rogan already does a lot for the UFC with having these fighters on his show.
Yeah.
And I think he would continue to do that if he left, commentary, because he still does like combat sports. I just don't think he's as in tune with the game to be a commentator.